Yeah, I mean, part of the, addiction, like you say, it's a response to internal pain. It's also a response to atomization, to loneliness, to disconnection, to disaffection. And we're seeing that's now epidemic in this country, where so many of us feel that we're no longer connected to a community. There was a poll recently that showed that, there was a 2013 poll that showed that, that when asked, 85% of kids, of Americans under 35 said they were proud of the United States of America. The same poll taken last month showed only 18%.
Wow.
So they've lost faith in our country. They've lost hope for their own future. They've lost a connection to community. And now, we're seeing the biggest cause of suicide among Black youth today, of death among Black youth is suicide. We lost 106,000 kids last year to fentanyl overdose or to other opioid overdoses. That's double the number of kids that we lost in the 20-year Vietnam War. We're really in a crisis now. One of my kind of moonshot program or Peace Corps program, to use metaphors from my uncle's administration, will be to start to launch a string of healing centers around this country, particularly in rural areas where people will go there and do regenerative farming, regenerative agriculture, grow good food, healthy food, and learn to live in communities again without screens, without cell phones. And I've looked at these places for 40 years. The rehab industry in this country is, I would say, somewhat predatory at this point, like many other industries. But I had a relative who was in a lot of trouble, and I started looking all over the world for places that had a different model. And I found this place in Italy, in Tuscany, called San Patrignano, and it's a 500-acre farm. There's 2,000 kids who live there. It's absolutely free. The only thing they ask you to commit to is to stay there for 5 years. When you go there—
5 years?
Listen, if it's a choice, a lot of kids today are on a trajectory where they're gonna die.
Yeah.
And 5 years is like college. And if you can save somebody's life, it takes time because you have to reparent the person. You have to reorient them to live in a completely different way. And they're taking people who are criminals, who are not only drug addicts, but people who are headed for prison, headed for something very bad. They take them and they transform them into good citizens. So they, at that place, it's completely self-supporting. In Italy, you can do a checkoff on your taxes to send $1, approximately $1 on your taxes. There's a little checkoff to San Patrignano. Most of their money comes from their industries. So they have one of the best bakeries in Europe, and they teach kids traditional baking skills. They have an apparel center where they do weaving, and they make accessories, fashion accessories. So they make purses for De La Valle, for Prada, for Gucci, for these other big brands. They have a vineyard, 500-acre vineyard, and they make some of the finest wine in Europe. They have kennels, and they have a wallpaper factory that makes this hand-painted wallpaper, very, very traditional, with traditional artisans. There's no cell phones allowed, there's no screens, and the people live together in very, very tight kind of barracks. There's 6 girls, and my relative was a girl, and she was put in with 6 girls who watched her every move. And if she did something selfish, if she did something dishonest, she was called on it. And it taught her a new way of living in a community. And when she came out, she became very, very successful. And not only in her business life, but also her social life, she was utterly transformed. 2 days ago, I went to a place in Salt Lake City called The Other Side that is modeled on San Patrignano. And they have now 3 city blocks full of buildings. They have 300 convicts. They take people out of prison, or they take people who are facing long sentences, and they interview them to see if they're suitable for the program. They bring them into that program, and they rehabilitate them. And they have to make a 2-year commitment. It's absolutely free. Anybody can walk in the street and take advantage of it. They have the biggest moving company in Salt Lake. They have the biggest storage company in Salt Lake. They have a thrift store that is the size of 2 Walmarts. They have a construction firm that is very, very successful, and they teach the inmates how to be electricians, how to be plumbers, all of these skills that they can use in the world. And the guy who started it was facing his 5th term in prison. He was facing a 29-year prison sentence. And he persuaded the judge to allow him to go to Delancey Street, which is a therapeutic community in San Francisco. And he ended up working there for 8 years and then coming out and starting this place. And it was so inspiring going to this place and to The Other Side and seeing what they'd done, because it's a model that can be reproduced elsewhere. And instead of, when I was in prison for the summer of 2001, I was sent to, I won a lawsuit against the Navy in Puerto Rico for bombing the island of Vieques. And I did it, the judge, there was a corrupt judge who would not enforce my injunction. And so the group, I was representing 10,000 people on the island, and they asked me to do a civil disobedience to go onto the live fire zone while the Navy was bombing, and I was arrested. They told me, I said, how long am I gonna be in jail? And they said, well, just probably a day. But I ended up being the whole summer in maximum security prison. And my youngest son was born while I was in prison. The first time I saw him was on Visitor's Day. But in that prison, which is a federal prison, much better than state prison, I couldn't even go to an AA meeting. There was no opportunities for any of the people who were living there to make their lives better. And we need to do that better. We need to make sure when people come out of prison, they're actually productive. So the guy who was running this said to me that when he first started trying to place the convicts in businesses in Salt Lake, that nobody wanted them because they're ex-cons. But now they have such a good work record and such a good reputation that he has a list of hundreds and hundreds of businesses on the wall and they employ 100% of the people who leave, and everybody in Salt Lake wants people from this program because they're such responsible workers. Oh, it was inspiring to me to see that, the transfer of what I saw in San Patrignano happen in this country. Today, the biggest industry in rural areas in our country are prisons. And I want to change that and make rehab and restoration of the feeling of community in this country, the skills of living in a community, to reparent all of these kids who are lost today, an entire generation of kids who are lost. Give them the opportunity to go to places where they can learn to be productive members of society, and where they can get inspired again about their lives and regain hope in their lives.